everyone. Thanks so much for being here. I know there's been lots of talking this morning, so just before I start, can I have everyone just stand up in your chair, please? And go like this. Maybe the other way as well. And make sure you keep breathing, no one passing out, please. Alright, okay, that's better. Thank you, I needed that too, so I appreciate that. It just so happens that I grew up on an organic grain farm. Straw bales for me meant itchy arms and scratchy legs and stacking hay bars on really hot days and hanging out with my dad. And that's me, the little one by the red flask there. It's pretty small. Going up on a farm is a lot of work. It's a lot of experience with the seasons, which I really appreciated, and lots of access to really good hut building materials. Straw bales are fantastic. Not only do we build huts, but we actually excavated little huts inside hay barns, which my dad hated, but it was fantastic. It was the best way to grow up and play and have real kind of hands-on, really early on experience. So today I want to talk about experiential education, especially, well, I'm the only one who knows my story, and that's the only story I can tell. So when I started looking for training and education around natural building, the first questions were how do I get skills, how do I get experience, where do I go for training? And I think naturally as Kiwis we look offshore first. We forget about our country. Where can I go? Is there a program somewhere? There must be someone somewhere that can teach me something. So I put together my own journey schooling education because I couldn't find a place I could just rock up to and feel like I could gain the education that I was really looking for. And some of the things I really wanted to do was find people who could teach me their life's work and the skills that they had. I really wanted to know about different climates. I'm from North Canterbury, so it's reasonably hot and dry down here, but I'm really interested, what is it like in the tropics? What is it like in the Arctic? What is it like with different materials? Different styles. I was looking for basically anything that could be as little processed as possible. I wanted roundwood timbers. I wanted mud, mostly mud. I wanted a mud experience. I'm really interested in people and communities and how things have developed, especially, having my family come to New Zealand 4 or 5 generations ago, and there's this kind of thing that happens when people expand into other countries and they take their building style and their designs and they kind of assume that the other culture will like that style too. And I don't really, I kind of agree with that. I feel like culture has its real own style and the housing should look really different depending on what the culture is asking for. I was really interested in trying to find houses that I could build for less than $5,000 and top-end stuff. What does that look like? If you have money, often you get a lot of really creative possibilities because they have the money to go for these different things, especially curves. I'm always chasing curves. Materials choice, that's really about, can you guys hear me all right? Yeah, wonderful. Awesome. Materials choice is kind of, what is the least far you can bring something and the least you can process it? What should I plant on my land for my grandkids' generation to be able to harvest at the timbers and put them in their house? And I really wanted to work in places that had environmental catastrophe and then be able to learn to design and build to be able to avoid those things. And then there's the other stuff. So there's things that happen when you go journey schooling around the world that you could never have imagined that you'd learn, and mostly that's the most formative stuff, and I want to tell you about some of that as well. Nepal was my first on the list. It was my first time being an international volunteer. It was my first time doing any kind of natural building, and the thing I learned in Nepal most really was about the dreams of the community. In this case, they really wanted a library. They didn't really have a lot. The community project was based on self-sufficiency. So what is the most self-sufficient a community can be? It needs to be able to grow its own food. It was a very small school for the kids. We were also working on the idea of an orphanage. And they wanted somewhere they could be, and obviously we didn't even have any books, so we kind of scouted all the embassies through town, and we got some interesting books, and we got some incredibly boring reports of fiscal years and financial through that. One of the things I learned here is about integration. So coming as an international volunteer, I work with the leprosy community, and I work with the kids, and I work with the mamas. And when you're all doing a project together with almost no language in common, it's really incredible what can happen. The New Mexico desert. Here it was about learning to build where no grid exists at all. So this is 8,000 feet up, it's ringed by volcanoes. It's almost nothing grows, just a little bit of sagebrush. And we were building off-grid homes, with no grid to even start them from. So we have a big truck full of solar panels, and you're actually running everything off-grid to even start, and a generator sometimes. I learned about being on site with 35 people. That was quite an education. It was a 2-month building course where we did start 2 shell and systems in 2 months plus classes, and we did build a lot, but we also learned how to keep hydrated at 8,000 feet with the local brewery. It was fantastic. I was learning there about how to design houses to catch every single drip of water that comes out of the sky, melt your snow, everything you can imagine. You can only live out there in the desert if you're off-grid, and you design your house to use the water for drinking and for washing and for growing your food inside. For recycling it into your toilet, and to green the desert outside. So these homes really are designed for water use and for just so much thermal mass. It's almost inhospitable outside at all times. It's 40 degrees and it's minus 40 degrees, so the only thing you can really build is a desert oasis, which looks something like this. And I got to work on more high-end dwellings as well. This is a beautiful 3-bedroom off-grid earthship in a very, very remote location. Often these houses actually tend to be funded by preppers who think about the end of the world. These are bomb-proof shelters. The other thing I learned in the New Mexico desert was how to manage and run this incredibly complex off-grid intern house. It has 12 bedrooms and 8 bathrooms, a glass pyramid, 4 lounges, and all sorts of odd systems. It was a hybrid of different things that got added to and kind of repurposed. And I was called the house mum. It was my first experience of having 20 interns arrive and depart every month, and experiencing what happens when you get fresh young people arrive who have never really been out of their city, or maybe not out of America, and have them come for a month and have a real education about living together in community, building really hard every day, and living in an off-grid setting. In Adelaide, I learned about taking desert homes and trying to reconstruct them up to standard for council in Australia, which was pretty difficult and kind of expensive. I learned things like trying to pour concrete in a week of 40 degrees. And I learned that pretty much everything in Australia is trying to kill you. Not like here, we're very safe in this country. I learned about creativity. Actually, the best imaginations that you can have of a detail, if you actually put it to people and give them real independence and real, space to create things, it always turns out better than I could have imagined it. So here I was working with another 35 interns over a 6-week period, and it's a lot of work to feed, manage, have morning circles, teach, prepare, and have people on site. But there's just so much creativity that happens, so much collaboration. This is the process of building as a verb. It's really incredible. In the Philippines, I got my wish to work in a disaster area. So in the Philippines, I was part of a team that came to work after Yolanda, which was the typhoon that came through. And it's hard to really explain what it felt like to be there. We arrived in Tacloban, which was one of the southern islands that was hit very, very hard. And there are some roofs still on, but mostly they're tarps or repatched corrugated iron. Most of their industry was lost because they were using the coconut palm for coconut water and actually fermenting for coconut wine. So in this place they had lost quite a few lives, they had lost most of their homes and almost all of their industry. The thing that made the biggest impression on me actually was the people of the community and their absolute undying gratitude. That they couldn't believe that we had turned up at their place. We had wanted to fly from our countries, which were fine and happy and normal, into their devastated, difficult country to help them. And we had so many hugs and so many tears. I just couldn't believe that we'd done that. And it really made an impression on my soul. We were building a storm shelter for them. They didn't ask for replicable housing. They asked for a place that when the next typhoon came, they could take their whole community and they could go inside and everyone would be safe. Because that's the first thing, it's about life. And we built this kind of very unusual, non-replicable, please don't replicate it, storm shelter, which we buried all the way up to the roof. It was my first time being given specific small groups of interns to train. So I had actually 3 young Filipino women who had never had any building experience, and we had almost no language in common. And we spent 9 days together, only 9 days, 9 days straight, building every day, and we got things built and we made really, really fast friendships. And the sheer numbers, we had about 70 people on site. And in 9 days, we built this building, buried it to the roof, and they had a slab poured where they could catch water. There was systems at the back. It was completely covered in the interior courtyard, and I know that they've used it at least twice since Yolanda to shelter in. It's right beside where they have their school, and they actually use it for classrooms as well, because the school's kind of concrete block and not that exciting, and the kids, they really want to hang out here, which is kind of nice. Wow, yeah. In Malawi, I learned a lot about gender lines and culture. The women in Malawi are absolutely incredible. They do everything you can imagine. They obviously look after the children, they grow the food, cook the food, bring up the water, look after the animals, all of the cooking. They look after the men as well. They're really, really amazing. We didn't have very much water access, and we gave the women money to the community to help us in our endeavours.
There's a glass of water to your right.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I also learned about what happens on a building site with or without the chief overseeing the process. So there are really strong cultural lines in Africa, and it was an unusual situation for me. There was a group called Empower Malawi. They were the local NGO, and they hired an international building company that was hosted by Architecture for America, and we brought 50 international interns with us. But they put our building on a community kind of, I was going to say highway, but it was a small walking track between villages. That was kind of the main meeting point. And I'm not entirely sure how much the village knew about what we were going to do or how much they wanted it, because it was a local project, but they weren't from the village. So there had to be actually lots of coordination on site between the local project, the international crew, and village elders from a number of tribes that kind of had to come in and have lots of conversations. And it was really amazing that we were invited into that. Obviously we couldn't understand very much, but just to see how it looks like when you take a community and bring something to gift to it. Are you working with the dreams of the community, or are you working with someone else's dreams that you assume the community is going to want? They're very different. I work with kids a lot, they were great. The other really challenging aspect was working with young African men on site. We were asked, obviously, to train them. We didn't build their whole community centre, we built the first 3 rooms, and we were asked to teach them and pass on the knowledge. And as a white young woman on a building site in Africa, it was really challenging to hold my own authority in a really compassionate way. They're not used to being told what to do by women or white women, or we had absolutely no words in common. I had none of their language and they had none of mine. It took me about 3 days to crack them, and after that we became really good friends. Smiling a lot, really, just basically you have to smile and just have a really good time. I also learned how to build on very little food. The option for eating was genetically engineered corn put through a hammer drill and cooked into glue paste. It was terrible. driving through Malawi and there'd be these massive signs with corn on them with wings, and it says, "Give your corn wings, Monsanto." Yeah. So I was pretty unimpressed about that, and we decided to try not to support Monsanto. So we basically bought every tomato, banana, and packet of peanuts within a 100k radius. The most surreal moment in Africa was sitting down with a laptop, trying to explain building plans to a community of people who know about how to get water and how to grow food and how to survive. I think it was probably their first time seeing technology, and it was through the interpreter from the project. But this knowledge transfer didn't really work. A number of projects I have been to knowledge transfer where you really work with the community well. This community transfer, a bit dubious. Did I mention the women are amazing? This is our team in Africa, or most of our team. It was really diverse. International interns had come from everywhere just to be able to kind of give their heart and soul into a project. And the hardest part about Africa was having to leave. Thailand was another really interesting community experience. It was having an international project created in the middle of Thailand with no community involvement whatsoever. So it is a beautiful permaculture farm, and I did a natural building course there, and I learned about mud bricks and rendering with mud. And all of the photos I have of Thailand, you can't tell that it's Thailand. There are no Thai people, there was no Thai language, and there was no community integration. We didn't go to the local markets to sell our food and our produce. We were an insular island inside a project. And I learned some good skills, and it was really interesting. But without that real context about community, what is the building, what does the work kind of really mean? Guatemala. In Guatemala, I was working for a project called The Long Way Home, and we were building a school in a very remote area. This is actually building with trash bottles. I don't know if you guys have ever come across this. In places like Guatemala, they have a lot of single-serve packets of everything, lollies and chips and plastic. And what we did, or what they've been doing there, is have a plastic bottle, and they get just a piece of steel rebar, and they, pack it in there until it's a really tight brick. And we put them in the walls with mud and string them all in, and use bamboo and make small huts and test buildings and things. The interesting thing about that is it's a project led by 3 Americans, and they have hired and they're teaching a 15-strong Guatemalan construction crew, which they're paying. But you don't get paid at the end of the week unless you bring in a trash bottle, which helps for our building materials. But it also means they're going home to their families and they're saying, look, we're not going to get paid so we can eat unless we put our rubbish in this bottle and take it over to the course. And that works. And that little house that you saw had 1,500 trash bottles in it. And we built another one that was actually a fence or kind of a guard to a property, which got all rendered in, and you can lose rubbish in the walls there. Otherwise, they burn it. They burn everything. I also learned how to motivate interns to unload this entire truck of bamboo and carry it 1.5 kilometres up a hill. Painful. The other thing we did is we built a house in 3 weeks. What that was in the Guatemalan construction crew, the foreman there, he needed I've got 5 minutes left? Oh my gosh. Okay, alrighty, I'm going to make this a little quicker. We had a massive team on site, we had 70, it was crazy. The Coromandel I learned, well, I'm not entirely sure what I learned, but it was a very interesting project. I learned about intern management, I learned about having international crews, I learned about building for big residential, I learned everyone eats a lot of food. I learned morning circle with 40 people takes a long time, and when it's a wet day, you have to entertain them. Roof shout was amazing, it was one of the best days of my life. I also learned about transferring it to New Zealand climate and what that really means. And doing it under the scrutiny of grand designs was very stressful. I'm going to flick through these quite quickly because the main point actually hasn't arrived yet. So I did a bunch of stuff. I rendered, I did cob, I laid mud bricks. I laid bottles until my head was going to explode. I did reliefs, I built an earth temple, I did some earth bag work, straw bale, tile, my eyeballs were going to pop out. Light earth with James Henderson and Australia, and a bunch of finishes. So what I really wanted to say is this. There is a recipe that I've been working on for a while, and that's about what is the recipe for natural building-based experiential education as a life-changing experience. And here is my recipe. Take the elements, which is contact to clay, to rocks, to timber, and having a purpose, building a structure. Add as much art and creativity as you can jam in there, and then a bunch of really awesome people. And what you get is a connected, creative space where ideas blossom, buildings happen, and people can grow. What I want to talk about is social sculpture, which is building as a verb. So social sculpture is termed by Joseph Beuys, and what he called it was social engagement leading to the transformation of society. I'm going to say that again. Social engagement leading to the transformation of society. He talked about art and the artifact. In this conference, we've talked about the artifact for days, and it's fantastic. And we have beautiful, natural, wonderful, life, world-saving, these amazing artifacts. But what is the art and what is the process? So this leads me to my current quest, which is finding forms of educational programs that provide an integrated experience leading to the transformation of society. It's not impossible, right? There's three short builds that I have a couple of photos of each that I wanted to tell you about, which are my most recent projects. And the first one is in Waiheke Island. I was incredibly lucky to work with father and two sons. Their collective careers are landscaper, stonemason and artist, carpenter and sculptor, and myself as an earth builder were the absolute dream team. Everything was detailed by hand, everything was locally sourced. These are recycled jar power poles. More curves than you can throw a stick at, obviously. We're all curvology experts. Bottle walls, natural renders, and here we have this beautiful little building. It's quite small, there's the shower. But there's three important things I wanted to mention here. One is we were living our ideals. We were living off-grid in a mud brick house on a beautiful eco-village. And every day we were talking about art and collaboration and healing and growing food. And we were very grounded in our own ideals. The second was that because they live in a consensus eco-village, they know how to make decisions in real time. So someone says, oh, you know what, we really should do this thing up here. And then there's this quick discussion and a bit of a tussle, and then 20 seconds later, oh, yeah, that's great. Complete consensus implementing of that detail. Happened so quick, it was fantastic. And the last thing I want to say about that project is that because it's rented accommodation and we put in a beautiful composting toilet, people can come to this property and have their first experience of living off-grid in an earth home with a composting toilet and actually feel what that feels like. Do I still have 2 minutes, Min? Okay. Project number 2. This is an educational form which is a start-to-finish build in 9 days. So in 9 days we built this little cob studio, and it gives enough time for classes. With 20 people on site, we have 15 students, 4 crew and a client. We were doing rock work, very physical every day, digging clay out of the bank at the bottom of the property. We were making mud with our feet, often with a DJ, because loud music really helps with the motivation. Building the walls, getting crazy with cob, that's the client, he's allowed. We got all the way to the end of the building. We had probably 60% women for the interns, and the crew was 3 women and 1 guy. So that's kind of something that I really like to do. I like to be able to hire my friends and especially work with women. We got this building all the way to its finishes. On the 9th day, we finished the landscaping outside and took our group photo. So here we are, start to finish in 9 days. And this is a course that I would really recommend anyone who's looking towards building their own home, just to get a sense of little bits all the way through, really using your hands and experiencing a real community environment in building. And the last quick one is the Hundred Hands Cottage, which is termed because I've had more than 50 people work on it so far, so double up to 100. This started from a vision board, basically, of our kind of collective dreams. And this is probably my most recent project. So I've had volunteers come for a day to volunteer, because some people can only come for a day. I've had long weekend workshops, and I've had 3-week internships. So it's trying to really find a version of social sculpture where you can come together and you can meet people and you can collaborate. You can find other people who have similar interests and wanting to build their own homes, and you can get your hands dirty every day. So you're really working on the tools, you're stripping logs while you're having a conversation about freedom and communities and dreams and globalism and history and the formative events of your life, and you can make cob and talk about your family and world ethics and art and diversity. And all these things just happen naturally. And then we made so much cob I reverted to a tractor. So here we are coming towards the end, and this is my most recent group of people which I totally fell in love with and had an amazing time, and I wish they would never leave. And at the very end of this course we put the roof beams on and celebrated, and there's me hanging out on the roof. So the future, what does the future actually hold? I have no idea, but my most recent job description that we came up with my friends at the pub last night is Dynamic Community Earth Building Project Coordinator. And one day I'll try and live up to that title. Until then, I would really like to start Natural Building School with some other very amazing talented people in the room, and we'll see what happens.